Victor, you have returned. The man's voice was deep and slow, each word dragging like it carried weight beyond human understanding. Victor bowed slightly. Yes, Baba, and I brought him. The man's head turned towards Ben. Though his face remained in the shadows, Ben felt the intensity of his gaze, cold, penetrating, knowing. A moment of silence passed. Then, the old man spoke again. You seek what you do not understand. Ben swallowed hard. His palms were sweaty. Come closer. He hesitated. Something in his gut told him this was the point of no return. But then, Victor gave him a slight nod, a silent reassurance. Slowly, Ben stepped forward. As he did, the door behind them slammed shut on its own. The ritual had begun. The air inside the chamber felt different, thicker, heavier, almost alive. Ben struggled to breathe as he took another hesitant step forward. The old man, still seated in his shadowed throne, tilted his head slightly, as if studying him. You do not belong here, the man said, his voice barely above a whisper, yet it echoed through the room like a thunderclap. Ben's chest tightened. Baba, he is ready, Victor interjected quickly. I vouch for him. A long silence followed. Then, a low chuckle rumbled from the old man's throat. We shall see. He raised a bony hand, and at once, two figures emerged from the darkness. Tall men dressed in red robes, their faces hidden beneath deep hoods. They moved without sound, their presence sending waves of unease through Ben's body. One of them carried a small wooden bowl filled with a thick, dark liquid that glistened under the dim candlelight. The other held a bundle wrapped in cloth. The first test, the old man said, is trust. Ben watched as one of the hooded figures stepped forward, raising the bowl towards him. The liquid inside gave off a strange aroma, bitter, earthy, with a faint metallic scent that made his stomach turn. Drink, the man instructed. Ben hesitated. Every instinct in his body screamed at him to refuse. What is it? He asked, his voice barely steady. The path you wish to walk requires faith, the old man said. If you doubt, you are free to leave. But if you leave, you may never return. Ben turned to Victor, his eyes pleading for an answer. But Victor only gave him a knowing smile. This is your test, brother. Nobody will decide for you. The room felt suffocating. His hands trembled as he reached for the bowl. The liquid was thick, almost sticky as he lifted it to his lips. His heart pounded. Was this a test of loyalty, a harmless initiation, or something far darker? He closed his eyes, and then he drank. The moment the liquid touched his tongue, a sharp, bitter taste flooded his senses. His throat burned as he swallowed, and almost instantly, the world around him began to twist. The candles flickered violently, the walls seemed to shift, and whispers, low, guttural voices, filled the air. His vision blurred. His knees buckled. The last thing he heard before everything went black was the old man's voice, calm and unwavering. Now, we begin. Ben awoke in the dimly lit chamber, his body heavy and mind foggy. The old man, still seated on his throne, watched him intently. Victor stood by his side, his expression unreadable. The ritual requires a price, the old man said, his voice echoing through the chamber. To gain immense wealth, you must offer something of equal value, a life for fortune. Ben's heart raced. He struggled to comprehend the gravity of the situation. You must choose, the old man continued. Your mother or your father. One must be sacrificed for the ritual to be complete. Tears welled up in Ben's eyes. His mind raced through memories of his parents, his mother's gentle smile, his father's unwavering support. The thought of losing either of them was unbearable. I can't, he stammered. I can't choose. The old man remained unmoved. You must. There is no other way. Ben turned to Victor, seeking a way out, but Victor's expression was stern. This is the price you must pay. Brother, it's your choice. With a heavy heart, Ben closed his eyes and made his decision. The weight of his choice crushed his spirit. My father, he whispered, his voice trembling. I choose my father. The old man nodded, as if he had expected this all along. He gestured to the hooded figures, who brought forth a small, ornate dagger. Place your hand over the bowl, the old man instructed. Ben did as he was told, his heart pounding. The hooded figure sliced his palm, letting his blood drip into the bowl. The room filled with a strange, otherworldly energy as the ritual commenced. The old man began to chant in an ancient language, his voice resonating with power. The candles flickered violently, and the room seemed to vibrate with an unseen force. As the ritual reached its climax, a piercing scream echoed through the chamber. Ben's vision blurred, and he felt a sharp pain in his chest. He collapsed to the floor, his body convulsing. When he regained consciousness, the room was eerily silent. The old man and the hooded figures had vanished, leaving only Victor and Ben in the chamber. Victor knelt beside him, a look of concern on his face. "It's done, brother. The sacrifice has been made." Ben felt a deep, hollow emptiness inside him. He knew that his father was gone, taken by the ritual. The weight of his decision pressed down on him, suffocating him with guilt and sorrow. "Let's go," Victor said softly, helping Ben to his feet. As they left the chamber and stepped back into the forest, Ben felt a profound sense of loss. The wealth and power he had gained came at a price too high to bear. He had crossed a line, and there was no going back. With the completion of the ritual, Ben's life took a dramatic turn. The sacrifices he had made, both moral and literal, catapulted him into a world of unimaginable wealth and power. Money flowed effortlessly into his accounts, and scamming became second nature to him. His newfound skills made him one of the most successful and feared Yahoo boys in Lagos. Ben threw the best burial ceremony for his dad, such as the one the neighborhood has never experienced. He built a grand mansion for his mother in the heart of Benin City. The sprawling estate, with its lush gardens and opulent interiors, stood as a testament to his success. His mother, unaware of the dark path his son had taken, praised him for his hard work and prayed for his continued blessings. In the world of high-stakes scamming, Ben's reputation soared. He attended lavish parties, where he rubbed shoulders with politicians, celebrities, and influential figures. His presence commanded respect, and his charisma drew people to him like moths to a flame. At these parties, Ben spared no expense. He ordered the finest champagne, bought expensive drinks for everyone, and always left generous tips. He was surrounded by the most beautiful women, who flocked to him, captivated by his wealth and charm. His nights were filled with extravagance, luxury cars, designer clothes, and exclusive nightclubs. Despite the hollow emptiness that lingered within him, Ben reveled in his newfound lifestyle. He became a symbol of success in his community, an inspiration to many who dreamed of escaping poverty. But beneath the surface, the weight of his choices and the loss of his father haunted him. As his wealth grew, so did his influence. Ben invested in legitimate businesses, laundering his money through various ventures. He funded charitable projects, built schools, and donated to churches, earning himself a reputation as a philanthropist. Yet, the darker side of his empire remained hidden, known only to a select few. Scamming became easier with each passing day. Ben honed his skills, developing sophisticated methods to exploit his targets. He preyed on the vulnerable, manipulating their emotions and emptying their bank accounts with ease. The thrill of the game and the rush of success drove him further down the path of deception. Ben's rise to wealth and fame seemed unstoppable, but the shadows of his past loomed ever closer. The price he had paid for his success was steep, and the consequences of his actions were yet to be fully realized. Ben's rise to the top of the scamming world brought him unimaginable wealth and a lifestyle that many could only dream of. He moved into a palatial mansion in Banana Island, a haven of opulence surrounded by high walls and guarded gates. The mansion boasted luxurious amenities, an infinity pool, a private cinema, and an expansive garden adorned with exotic flowers. His mother, now living in the mansion he built for her, was proud of his son's success, blissfully unaware of the dark means through which it was achieved. She often hosted prayer meetings and community gatherings, attributing their newfound fortune to divine blessings. Ben became a household name, his reputation as a wealthy and influential figure spreading far and wide. He attended the most exclusive parties, hosted by the elite of Lagos society. At these events, he was the center of attention, surrounded by admirers and sycophants eager to bask in his glory. He wore the finest designer suits, drove the most expensive cars, and was never seen without a beautiful woman on his arm. Scamming had become second nature to Ben. He orchestrated elaborate schemes, targeting wealthy individuals and corporations. His skills in manipulation and deception grew sharper, making him nearly unstoppable. The money flowed in effortlessly, and Ben reveled in his ability to control and exploit those around him. Despite the lavish parties and extravagant lifestyle, Ben couldn't escape the gnawing guilt that plagued him. The memory of the ritual and the sacrifice of his father haunted his every step. Nightmares of his father's face, filled with anguish, tormented him in the quiet hours of the night. In an attempt to drown out the guilt, Ben immersed himself further into the world of excess. He bought expensive drinks for everyone at parties, threw money around like it was nothing, and surrounded himself with the most beautiful women. But no matter how much he indulged, the void within him remained. His relationship with Victor grew more complex. While they shared the bond of their dark secrets and mutual success, tension began to simmer beneath the surface. Victor sensed Ben growing discontent and often reminded him of the price they had paid for their wealth. "Remember, brother, we chose this life. No turning back," Victor would say, his eyes dark with intensity. Ben nodded, but the weight of his choices pressed down on him like an unbearable burden. He had everything he had ever dreamed of: money, power, respect, but he had lost his sense of self in the process. The lavish lifestyle continued, but the cracks in Ben's facade began to show. He struggled to maintain the image of the successful and untouchable Yahoo boy. The pressure of living a double life took its toll, and Ben found himself at a crossroads once again. Ben's journey to wealth and power had brought him to the pinnacle of success, but the shadows of his past loomed ever closer. The choices he had made and the consequences he had yet to face threatened to unravel everything he had built. Despite the grandeur of his lifestyle, Ben couldn't escape the haunting memories of his father's sacrifice and the moral compromises he had made. He tried to bury the guilt beneath layers of wealth, luxury, and hedonism, but the cracks in his facade were beginning to show. One night, at an exclusive party in Ikoyi, Ben was the center of attention as usual. The room was filled with the elite of Lagos, politicians, celebrities, and influential businessmen. Laughter and music filled the air, and the scent of expensive cologne mingled with the aroma of gourmet food. Ben, dressed in a tailored suit that hugged his athletic frame, sipped on a glass of champagne as he chatted with a well-known actress. Her laughter was infectious, and her beauty captivating, but Ben's mind was elsewhere. As the night wore on, he stared into his drink, lost in thought. The party around him seemed to blur, and the once enjoyable atmosphere felt suffocating. Victor, noticing his friend's distraction, approached him. "Brother, what's wrong with you? This isn't the Ben I know," he said, clapping a hand on his shoulder. Ben forced a smile. "I'm all right, just thinking about some things." Victor raised an eyebrow. "You're carrying the world on your shoulders. Relax, enjoy the party. Life is short, let's enjoy it." But no amount of partying or luxury could silence the voice in Ben's head, a voice that constantly reminded him of the price he had paid for his success. In the following weeks, the pressure continued to mount. Ben's scamming operations expanded, and with growth came more risks. He became increasingly paranoid, constantly looking over his shoulder, fearing that the authorities or rivals would catch up with him. One evening, after a particularly stressful day, Ben returned to his mansion to find his mother waiting for him. She had noticed a change in her son and was deeply concerned. "Ben, my son, sit down. We need to talk," she said gently. He sighed and sank into the plush couch, his shoulders slumping. "Mama, what's happening? You're not the same Ben I raised. You're carrying a heavy burden, and I don't understand why. Talk to me, my son. What's worrying you?" she implored, her eyes filled with worry. Tears welled up in Ben's eyes. He wanted to confide in her, to unburden his soul, but he knew he couldn't. The truth was too dark, too dangerous. "Mama, nothing's worrying me. I'm just busy with work," he lied, forcing a reassuring smile. His mother sighed, her expression pained. "Ben, remember that life isn't only about money. Don't forget who you are and where you come from." Her words echoed in his mind long after she had left the room. Ben knew that he was losing himself in the pursuit of wealth, and the weight of his past decisions was becoming unbearable. Ben's life of wealth and power continued, but the cracks in his facade were widening. The price of his success was taking its toll, and the shadows of his past loomed ever closer. As Ben's empire reached its zenith, the foundations began to crack. His once thriving scamming operations faced increased scrutiny from law enforcement and rival Yahoo boys. The flow of money, which had seemed inexhaustible, began to slow to a trickle. His businesses, which had once flourished, started to crumble under the weight of financial mismanagement and legal issues. The lavish parties and extravagant lifestyle that had defined Ben's existence became less frequent. His influence waned, and the respect he had commanded began to fade. Ben found himself struggling to maintain the opulent image he had carefully constructed. One day, as he sat in his grand mansion, surrounded by unpaid bills and mounting debts, Ben realized the severity of his situation. The wealth and power he had sacrificed so much for was slipping through his fingers. Desperate and cornered, Ben reached out to the one person he believed could help him. "Victor. Victor, I need your help. Everything is falling apart," Ben said, his voice tinged with desperation. Victor listened quietly, his expression serious. "I told you this hustle is no child's play. Are you ready for another level?" Ben hesitated but nodded. "I have no choice. I'll do anything." Victor sighed, understanding the gravity of what he was about to propose. "We will see Baba again, but this time, the price will be high. Can you pay it?" Ben's heart sank. He knew what Victor meant. The thought of another sacrifice filled him with dread, but the fear of losing everything was even greater. "I will pay it," he replied, his voice barely steady. The drive to the forest was long and silent, the only sound being the hum of the engine and the occasional beep of Victor's phone. As they approached the eerie, abandoned house, Ben felt a deep sense of foreboding. The heavy wooden door creaked open, and the dimly lit corridor lined with burning candles greeted them once again. Ben followed Victor into the chamber where Baba awaited. The red drapes, the massive wooden table, and the heavy scent filled the room with an aura of dark ritual. "You have returned," Baba said, his voice echoing with power. "Your empire crumbles, and you seek to restore it." Ben nodded, his heart heavy with the weight of his decision. "I am ready to pay the price." Baba studied him intently, his eyes piercing through the shadows of his hood. "The price for continued wealth is steep. You must offer the life of your mother." Ben's world shattered. The thought of sacrificing his mother, the woman who had raised him, loved him unconditionally, and believed in him, was unbearable. Tears streamed down his face as he pleaded, "Baba, please. I can use another person, a stranger, not my mother." Baba remained unmoved. "No other life will suffice. You have 3 days to make your decision. Refuse, and you shall lose everything." Ben's heart sank as he realized the gravity of the ultimatum. Defeated and desperate, he returned home, his mind a whirlwind of confusion and sorrow. He couldn't bear the thought of sacrificing his mother, but the fear of losing everything he had built consumed him. Days passed, and Ben's depression deepened. He isolated himself, unable to find solace in the wealth that surrounded him. The once vibrant mansion felt cold and empty. His thoughts were filled with darkness, and he struggled to see a way out. Victor, sensing Ben's hesitation, grew impatient. "Brother, you don't want to do it? If you're not ready, I can't help you again. It's up to you." Ben couldn't bring himself to make the ultimate sacrifice. "I can't use my mother. I can't." Victor shook his head in disappointment. "Then you're on your own. I won't put myself in trouble because of you." With that, Victor cut all ties with Ben, leaving him to face the consequences alone. The weight of his sins and the pressure of his crumbling empire became unbearable. On the third day, as Baba had foretold, Ben's world came crashing down. The EFCC raided his mansion, arresting him on charges of fraud and money laundering. His bank accounts were frozen, his properties seized, and his businesses shut down. The empire he had built was destroyed in an instant. Ben was left with nothing but the haunting memories of his past choices and the unbearable guilt of the sacrifices he had made. The price of wealth had cost him everything, and he was now a broken man, stripped of his power and fortune. The moment Ben was arrested, his once glamorous world came crashing down. He was charged with multiple counts of fraud and money laundering, his crimes laid bare for all to see. The courtroom was filled with journalists and onlookers, eager to witness the downfall of the infamous Yahoo boy. The trial was a grueling ordeal. Evidence of his scamming operations was presented in meticulous detail, each revelation chipping away at the facade Ben had so carefully constructed. Witnesses testified against him, and the once admiring eyes of the public now looked upon him with scorn and disdain. Ben stood in the defendant's box, his face a mask of resignation. He knew what he had done, and he knew that justice would be served. His mother, seated in the gallery, wept quietly, her heart breaking at the sight of her son in chains. The judge's voice was stern as he delivered the verdict. Ben Etinosa, you have been found guilty on all counts. You are hereby sentenced to 7 years in prison. A collective gasp filled the courtroom, followed by murmurs of shock and disbelief. Ben's mother broke down in tears, her sobs echoing in the silence that followed the judge's words. As Ben was led away in handcuffs, he felt a crushing weight on his shoulders. The reality of his situation was inescapable, and the guilt he had carried for so long threatened to overwhelm him. Before he was taken to prison, Ben requested a private moment with his mother. The guards granted his request, and in a small, dimly lit room, Ben faced the woman who had given him everything. "Mother," he began, his voice choked with emotion, "I have something to confess." His mother looked up, her eyes red and swollen from crying. "Ben, my son, why did you do this?" Tears streamed down Ben's face as he took her hands in his. "Mother, I was desperate for money. I made a terrible mistake. I sacrificed father for wealth. Baba told me to sacrifice you too, but I couldn't. I asked for your forgiveness. Mother, I can't live with this guilt." His mother's world shattered in that moment. The weight of his confession crushed her, and the pain of losing her husband now intertwined with the knowledge of her son's betrayal. She struggled to find the words, her heart heavy with grief. "Ben, my son," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I forgive you, but the road you have chosen is filled with sorrow. I pray you will find redemption." Ben clung to his mother, his tears soaking her dress. The pain and guilt he felt were almost too much to bear, but in her forgiveness, he found a glimmer of hope. As he was led away to begin his 7-year sentence, Ben carried with him the weight of his past and the knowledge that he had broken his mother's heart. The road to redemption would be long and arduous, but he was determined to seek forgiveness and make amends for the choices that had led him to this point. Ben's journey to wealth had ended in tragedy, but the love and forgiveness of his mother offered a beacon of hope. The price he had paid was steep, but the path to redemption lay ahead.